Hello, welcome to session 11 of the Bebop Rewatch podcast. My name is Jason. I'm the host of the show, as you know by now. And I'm not joined this evening, unfortunately, by the Rustin Kid, aka Rich Kid. He couldn't make it. But we do have a very special guest with us, a friend of the show, a guy who's been around here before and, you know, is just a super swell guy to have around. That's Jed Shepherd. Jed, welcome to the show again, man. Thank you for coming back on board with us.
Thank you for having me as your new co-host of the Cowboy Bebop
Rewatch. Yeah, Rich is sacked. Don't worry. He ain't coming back, listeners. He's sacked.
We'll hear him rustling in the distance.
Yeah, he'll be rustling angrily in the background. No, I'm not. I'm not sacked. What are you talking about?
No, it's really good to be back, and it's good that this podcast is around because it makes me literally rewatch one of the best TV shows of all time, which is Cowboy Bebop, and like I loved watching this episode so much.
Yeah, man, this episode was amazing. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. What we do here, as Jed said, is basically we're rewatching the greatest anime show of all time, Cowboy Bebop. And you can at me with that if you want. Like, I don't care because it is the greatest and there's nothing you can tell me to think otherwise. But as said, week by week, what we do here is we go by a different episode or session, as they're referred to within the show, and we break it down. We talk about what happened, we talk about the things we liked, maybe some things that didn't work for us, and then we go through a bit of trivia as well behind the episode. So if you've been watching along with us, we're talking about session 11 today, which is called Toys in the Attic, and it's a really, really quality episode. I mean, I know we always say that, but man, this episode is so good on so many different levels. And of course, there's a reason why we've got Jed in today as well. And it's not just because he's a swell guy, as said, but also because, you know, Jed is somebody who works in the horror movie industry, is a scriptwriter, has written quite a few scripts that have been produced. He recently had a short film produced as well called Salt, which I'm sure all of you have seen because we talked about it before as well. If you haven't, make sure you Google Salt and go and check that out. It's amazing. But Jed has got a lot of experience with horror and he's a horror fan. So because this episode kind of leans quite heavily into sort of horror elements, we thought it'd be a good idea to get a guy who knows what he's talking about on board. So yeah, Jed, we can't wait to get to your thoughts and stuff on that. But in general, I mean, what did you make of the episode overall? I mean, I know at the top you said you loved it.
Yeah, I actually think I think this is my favorite episode actually. I might need to rewatch the whole thing again to kind of make sure for certain that this is, but I think this is almost like a standalone episode. It doesn't really tie in with too much of the other episodes around it, I think. I loved it. It felt very, very cinematic, and just overall, it is now my favorite episode of the Cowboy Bebop. So yeah, generally, absolutely loved it.
Yeah, it is amazing, and you're quite right. It is quite a standalone episode. This one, it doesn't quite, as you say, tie into the wider sort of narrative up to that point of what's happened with the characters. It's very much its own thing, and it's interesting how the series as a whole does that, because there are a few episodes in there where they're almost these kind of self-contained episodes where they have their own beginning, middle, and end, and they're not really designed to necessarily service the wider narrative. They're just there because, you know, the creators felt like, let's have some fun with this episode. But it works, you know. Whereas sometimes with TV shows that can be a little bit jarring depending on the type of, you know, wider story that they're trying to tell. But with this, it works really, really well, you know.
And one thing before we start, I definitely have to say that I think this episode takes a lot of inspiration from a couple of sources.
Definitely.
The film Alien or Aliens, definitely from the Alien franchise, but also from Red Dwarf. I'm pretty certain that when they made this, they looked at a couple of episodes of Red Dwarf where very similar things happen. In fact, some of it, I would say, is shot for shot exactly like the Red Dwarf episode Polymorph. Now, I don't know if you remember Red Dwarf episode Polymorph, which is season 3 of Red Dwarf.
Mm.
But very, very, very similar from the start to the finish. So I think there was a little bit of inspiration there, Red Dwarf.
Could be, you know. I mean, I don't remember that episode. I kind of vaguely remember that episode. Now you mention it, but I don't remember a lot of the details about that episode of Red Dwarf. But that wouldn't surprise me. That really wouldn't surprise me, because the series as a whole, and as you listeners will know, you know, because we've talked about it previously, the series as a whole takes a lot of inspiration from lots of different sources. Some of them are sometimes Japanese sources, sometimes they're American pop culture references, sometimes there's different things from around the world that they've picked up. So yeah, it may not be a coincidence that it feels very similar.
Yeah.
Because we know they do, you know, pay attention to a lot of things that are happening in pop culture. So yeah, it'd be interesting to look up what year that episode came out and to see, you know, when timeline is when that happened.
This one came out, the original air date in, I think in Japan, was January 2nd, 1999. Actually, that might be the American air date. So yeah, so the start of 1999, and the Red Dwarf episode would have come out like 1990. But
yeah, so there's enough distance there for it to have happened. Yeah, so
definitely. And this one's called Toys in the Attic as well. And I haven't quite figured out why it's called Toys in the Attic. Obviously, the location of a certain piece of kitchen furniture is located in the attic, which we find out later. But the toys element, I'm not 100% sure, unless Toys in the Attic is a phrase that I just don't know.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we'll certainly get to some of the trivia and the behind the scenes info a bit later on in the podcast. But it's interesting because a lot of the names of some of the episodes actually come from music, and particularly from specific albums and things like that. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a reference to some kind of album or track or something.
Yeah.
Like that. But
Aerosmith's big albums from the 70s is called Toys in the Attic.
Right. Well, so then that probably is it. Yeah.
Oh, and also I've just seen that Toys in the Attic is a euphemism for insanity.
Okay.
So yeah, if you've got toys in the attic, it means you're insane, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I've never heard that phrase before. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, well, cool. Well, listeners, you know what we're about to do right now. We're going to dive into the details of the episode and such. So I said, if you haven't seen Session 11 yet, turn this off, go and watch Session 11, and then come back and listen, because we're obviously going to be talking spoilers here as well. Okay, so the episode, Jed, I mean, I like the way that this episode starts, because... you mentioned at the top about the influence of kind of Alien and Aliens episode as a whole. But this was quite different. I mean, I was trying to remember if in maybe Ridley Scott's Alien there was specific POV shots. I think there were, but I can't exactly place them. So maybe you can help me kind of place where they play.
So there's definitely POV shots in Aliens, so in the sequel to Alien, so James Cameron's Aliens, where there's similar running through corridors and stuff. But the what I noticed about because there's parts where you're seeing it from the creature's point of view, but you're seeing it in like heat vision, so you're seeing it in the red-yellow kind of heat vision mode.
Yeah.
And people normally associate that with Predator. But Predator actually took it from this 80s werewolf movie called, what's it called again? Wolfen. There's a film called Wolfen, which is a real classic, underrated 80s werewolf movie. And they were first to do point of view, from a creature's point of view, and do the red heat-seeking view. But it's mostly closely associated with Predator, I guess. So they've kind of melded Alien and Predator, which of course becomes its own movie a bit later on. into their mythology here. And I think it works really well because like you really do think you're scrambling around the ship through like small doors and past pipes and stuff. It takes on that journey.
Yeah, I really did like the introduction as well. So the episode begins with a POV shot, and we don't really get to see what point of view we're looking at, I guess is the best way to describe it. It's just we know there's something that is moving through what looks like the air conditioning of the ship of the Bebop. And it makes this that they use really good sound effects as well, because this kind of squelchy noise, which kind of gets your skin tingling a little bit because you're like, ugh, what is that? You know?
Gross. Did you think it was Ein at first? Did you think it was like Ein at first?
No, I didn't. Funnily enough, I kind of felt it was something quite malevolent because I guess because of the use of the color red from the POV. Yeah. Although I suppose it would make sense for Ein because the dogs being colorblind, it might have made some sense there. But yeah, no, I just always got the feeling it was something creepy and a bit untoward. And also when it started chasing the rat in the corridor as well, that made me think, oh, okay, like we're in for something here. So yeah, we get that very creepy kind of opening shot, which really does set the tone for the whole episode. And then we progress from there, and we see that the crew of the Bounty are busy doing various things. Spike is barbecuing like kebabs. I think it is some kind of kebabs he's trying to cook with a flamethrower. Because he's Spike. Because why just cook the kebabs when I can flamethrow them? Like, it just made no sense. Jet and Faye, I think, are gambling at a certain point.
What is going on there? What is going on? How did Jet manage to convince Faye, or the other way around, to play this strip poker or strip gambling game?
Well, the thing is, as well, at this point in the story, Jet knows that Faye is a cheat. Because that was established fairly early on, in the series that Faye cheats at all of these games. She always cheats. That's how she always wins, because she cheats. But like for some reason, he seemed to think he could beat her. I don't know why. And then obviously it's revealed very early on that she's got a device around her leg that's kind of manipulating these dice that they're rolling. So that he never wins, to the point where she manages to force him down to his underwear, and then he's got to lose his underwear as well.
I love that shot. I love that shot where Jet's underwear like floats through the air and he lands on Spike.
Spike comes through the door with his kebabs, and his burnt out kebabs, by the way, and he's just like, what the hell's going on here? Why is there underwear floating all around the place? And I think Ed and Ein are both asleep at that point as well, so they're both kind of knocked out and sort of sleeping. Then they kind of get disturbed by a noise that they hear, which wakes up Ein, and he looks up at the vent and starts kind of like growling and stuff. Jet gets up and he goes to the attic, which is like where they have a whole load of stuff in storage on the Bebop. And he goes up there to go and get like a blanket to wrap himself in. And then there is, you kind of see that whilst he's looking at an old fridge that they have back there in storage, you kind of see something kind of zooming around and kind of zipping around. You can't really tell exactly what it is at that point. Definitely something there. Faye is kind of then sitting on the couch, and she's got like Spike. She's got like a Tech 9 machine gun and all kinds of stuff from Jet. Like, it's just crazy the amount of stuff she's got. She's literally in there with her horde. And then Spike obviously calls her out about her cheating and the fact that she basically didn't play fair with Jet.
Do you think Jet knew this all along? Do you think Jet knew he would lose, but just wanted to get kind of like naked? Like, it's just into that kind of thing. It feels like he knew what was happening. He was like, "Oh, fair enough." Like he was into it.
Maybe in an odd sort of way he was. I don't know, but I mean, he Jay is very much a character, because last week the episode we looked at last week was kind of focused on him and his past,
his backstory,
kind of how he kind of manages his emotions and his feelings. And he seems like a guy who's very kind of when he's up and he's jovial and he's happy, but when he's down, he's really depressed and he's down and he's melancholy, and he really kind of goes for these kind of extreme sort of highs and lows almost. And we kind of theorized previously on that episode that maybe he suffers from like a form of depression, and so that's why he kind of has so many of these moments where he just kind of is very, very, as I said, very, very low. And what you find sometimes with people like that is when they're given to those kind of lows, they're also kind of given to really doing crazy stuff just to kind of pull themselves back out of whatever it is they're into. So you might be onto something there in the sense that he may have just done it because it's just like, well, sod it. I need to get out of this funk I'm in. Let me just do some crazy shit. Let me try and play Faye at cards. It'll probably give me an excuse to do something wild that will lift me up. Feelings,
and to be honest, like if you're in space for a considerable amount of time and nothing is happening, you would do that too. You'd think of ways to entertain yourself. And this is another reason why I think I closely associate this episode with certain episodes of Red Dwarf, because in Red Dwarf, the crew are 3 million years into deep space. They haven't got a sausage to do, so they're just making up games as they go along. They're playing strip poker with each other. These like space bums, they're doing stuff like that. There's little creatures running around the ship, and this whole setup is very, very, very Red Dwarf to me. This entire setup, which is good because I'm a big Red Dwarf fan. So I appreciated that this was similar. But yeah, Faye's a stone cold cheat, like.
Oh yeah. Faye definitely takes no prisoners when it comes to. Well, she takes no prisoners in her life, full stop. But especially when it comes to gambling, as said, we've already established that Faye is somebody who will do whatever it is that is needed in order for her to come out on top. So if that means cheating her friends, if that means cheating people she cares about, she don't care. Like, she's gonna do it. So yes, it admonishes her a little bit for that.
Yeah, I'm very keen to see the representation of Faye Valentine in the Cowboy Bebop live action Netflix show. I'm very, very keen to see Pinada, who's playing Faye. I'm very keen to see what she does with her. If she can manage to portray her in the way that she should be, which is kind of ruthless to a certain extent, but also she has loads of issues. She has loads of stuff going on.
Oh, yeah.
She's actually from our time as well. She's like from now.
She is, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's lots. I mean, Jed's slightly jumping ahead here, but there's lots to come in this series that will explain a lot about Faye, because Faye is I mean, we've touched on it slightly in some of the previous episodes, and some of the previous episodes do kind of give you hints. But there's a lot more to Valentine than BCI. Many things. As Jed said, there's a lot going on there. So it will be interesting to see the live action. You know what? Remind me, and we'll have a little chat about the live action after this. After we get through this episode, and I'll get your thoughts on that as well. So back to the episode itself. As said, Spike kind of admonishes Faye for what she's done to Jet. She's effectively ripped him off. But before it goes any further, there's an alarm that goes off on the ship, and they kind of rush towards the attic, to the storage room, where they find Jet is there. And he seems to be in a bit of an odd state, and he's rambling a little bit, and he's talking about something bit him. So they're like, what bit you? And he doesn't know. And then one of the boxes comes a rat that runs out, and Faye is just like, oh, for God's sake, you called us up here because you got bit by a rat, and then walks off. And then he's like to Spike, don't leave me. Like, I got bitten by something. I know it. I feel it. I got bitten by something. And Spike kind of pauses for a moment, and then kind of says, well, I don't think it's anything to worry about.
Yeah.
And he says, well, look, it came from the old fridge, like from the old fridge that we've got in the back. And then Spike kind of says, "Well, I don't remember the fridge. I don't even know what you're talking about," and then just kind of moves into it. Spike and Jet are kind of back in the main room now when Spike is trying to come up with a medicine for Jet to take for his bite. And there's all kinds of crazy stuff that they're giving him. Like I think at some point he gives.
And it's like purple, isn't it? It's like a big purple kind of bruise almost, but it's like it looks sore.
Yeah, so they give the Spike is recommending that he drinks like a squashed up lizard or something like that, I think it is, and a dead scorpion and all kind of crazy stuff, and Faye kind of rightly comes around and is like, "What the hell are you doing? Like this thing thinks like what on earth you're gonna drink that?" So basically, Jet ends up drinking this stuff, and then he passes out. And then it's as he passed out that you realize he's got this massive purple bruise on the back of his neck, which is where he's kind of been bitten. And after that, they try and figure out like why he's gone down. So Spike takes kind of a sample of Jet's blood and is trying to work out what the poison is in his body, because there's clearly a poison there. But they're having no luck. They're coming up with kind of no matches on this computer at all. And then it's Jet kind of is awake now, and there's a funny scene where Spike is kind of going through these different diseases, and Jet is like, "Oh God," and then he's like, "No, don't push cholera," and he's like, "Oh, thank goodness," and then he says, "Oh, maybe Ebola," and then he's like, "Oh God." And then he's like, "No, it doesn't match that either." And it's like, "Oh."
It's funny because, like, in Japan at the time, in like the late 90s, early 2000s, there was like an Ebola kind of crisis there. So
I was going to bring that up as well. Yeah, there was, wasn't there? Yeah, I remember that.
Because there was a few horror films from around that time as well, surround Japanese horror films about Ebola. I actually watched one the other day, and it was called I've got it here. It was called Ebola Syndrome, which is like quite a famous Japanese. It's from 1996, Japanese horror film that is gross, beyond gross, in fact. And it's funny that just Ebola keeps coming up in Japanese pop culture around this time.
Yeah, it's they had an outbreak there. I can't remember what exactly caused the outbreak in Japan back then, but yeah, they did have like a mini Ebola outbreak, and I remember it did inspire a lot of body horror from Japan at that time. So yeah, that's definitely something to take a look at, listeners, as well. If you're into kind of Japanese horror and things like that, then definitely check that out. Yeah, Ebola syndrome is worth a look, definitely. Yeah. So they're still kind of struggling to work it out, what the poison is. Spike kind of theorizes that maybe it's some kind of mutant rat that's bitten him, and is giving him the poison, which Faye kind of laughs off. Ed suggests that maybe it's some kind of alien organism that has bitten him. And Spike kind of dismisses that theory out of hand. And then Phage is just like, "Both of you are crazy," and kind of walks off and leaves it at that. Then we get a really, really cool scene, and definitely a classic horror scene, which is Faye is in the bath, and we get a kind of POV shot of whatever it is that's crawling through these air vents, and it stops just above her bath and then kind of just drops down. And the kind of thudding noise as it drops, and so that obviously wakes up Faye. But when she looks around, she can't see anything. And but it kind of reminded me a lot of like kind of the Blob, and also I think Sliver as well.
Yeah, that's a good show actually. There is a bath scene.
Yeah, I think Sliver does have a bath scene of that kind of type as well. Where that's featured.
I mean, women in bath in horror films in general is quite a big trope. Like it's in Nightmare on Elm Street with Nancy.
Yeah, I was going to say Nightmare on Elm Street as well.
Freddy sticks his glove up between her legs, and it's also because like that's when we are at our most vulnerable as well. So to have something horrific like that happen just amplifies it. And also, this is a good excuse, obviously, because a lot of guys watch this and they're watching to see Faye kind of get a little bit naked. So it's very, very clever of them to try and like put it into a horror scene, pretending that it's like vital to the plot that she's in the bath. But yeah, yeah, for the scene to be fun.
Yeah. But no, I mean that's a great point that you raise about the vulnerability, because that I guess that's where the fear comes from, isn't it? Because if there's one thing that we don't like, is to be made to feel vulnerable. And that's what good horror does. It always makes us feel. It strips away our comfort zones and makes us feel, uncomfortable and feel vulnerable and exposed. And that's what this scene does really well, actually. So Faye kind of, as I said, tries to look around to see what has dropped down, but she can't see anything. And then fatally, she kind of leaves her leg dangling outside of the bath. We then get another scene where it cuts back to Spike and Ed, and they've kind of put together these kind of goggles, I guess, to try and view whatever it is that is stalking them on the ship. And that reminded me as well, Jed, of quite a few horror films. I mean, I'm sure there's probably a couple of references you can think of, but
so it was goggles.
Yeah, when they were building the goggles to put on the goggles and stuff, it kind of reminded me a bit of like Predator 2. It reminded me a bit of Alien. It reminded me a bit of do you remember that Peter Weller kind of sci-fi horror film? I think it was called
Screamers. Is it Screamers?
Yeah.
That's
it reminded me
of a great classic.
Yeah. I love Screamers, man. Screamers.
They made like 5 or 6 of those movies. It's like they're still making those movies, but just no one ever sees it. But like every now and again, I see it like just pop up on the DVD shelf, like at the bottom. Like they made Scanner 6, not Scanner 6, Screamers 6. But Peter Weller's only in the first one. But yeah, it did remind me of that, actually. You're right, and all those kind of like 90s sci-fi horrors where the budgets aren't, but the ideas are big. I love stuff like this. I love it when a team is trapped somewhere because they're in space. They go nowhere. There's some people just trapped on the ship with them. They've got to just use what's around them, use the tools they've got at hand, the little things they can like scrap together, the bits of metal to kind of make something to like fight this force that's trying to kill them. I love stuff like this. It's classic horror tropes.
Yeah, totally. There's always that MacGyver scene, I guess you could call it, where they, where, as you said, they kind of, the heroes have got to use their ingenuity and the whatever resources are around them in order to defend themselves from whatever it is that's attacking them. And as you said, it's classic horror, and it always makes for good watching,
Yeah.
But I mean, in this case,
have you watched the film The Nun, the most recent one that came out?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, I heard the reviews weren't good.
Yeah, it isn't great, but you reminded me of it. Just the fact that they're trapped in this building with this nun, and it just so happens the one thing that can kill the nun is hanging around the main character's neck just the whole time. You just think, oh, come on.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it's bad. But
oh my god, they really didn't try, did they?
No, it was bad. It made a hell of a lot of money, but still, it was bad. But yeah, like this is definitely like 100%. It's literally a horror film. This episode of it is horror. There's no two ways about it. Whereas some episodes are like blatant westerns, blatant like high concept sci-fi. This is a horror, like at its core.
No doubt. So yeah, as I said, Spike and Ed are trying out this equipment that they've put together. And I think at one point Spike puts on his goggles and sees like a kind of blob kind of dashing across the floor, but kind of shrugs his shoulders and like, maybe it's just the equipment. But then Faye comes out of the bath, and she's kind of freaking out and going, "Oh, what do you think will happen if the creature bites you? What do you think it would do?" And Spike says, "I don't know." And then Faye kind of does her melodramatic kind of thing that she does so well, where she's like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna die. I'm too young to die. And then she just kind of passes out. And then you see that she's got the same kind of purple mark on her leg that Jet has got on his neck. So that was kind of a funny scene, and I quite like that again because it kind of shows Faye's character and how she's kind of given to sort of like hyperbole 1 minute and then extremely dismissive of things the next. But it was fun to watch that. So now we're down basically to Ed, Ian, and Spike as the only ones who haven't been attacked yet by force. And then the next scene kind of brings us to Ed and Ian, who are kind of exploring in the ship. Ed is kind of doing some kind of narration thing because throughout the episode, they keep referring to. So each character kind of has a monologue where they describe a lesson that they've learned during the course of the episode.
That was weird. Why did they do that?
I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up in a bit. But when it came to
Ed, in any other episodes, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's something they just did for this episode.
Right.
But when it comes to Ed's one, it's just hilarious because Ed just like typically makes no sense at all. It's just something about like, so Ed is out and Ed is wandering the ship because we got to look for the space monster or something like that. And it's just like, what?
What? Yeah, what kind of lessons that?
What is that? Yeah, what are we learning here? I don't understand. But it's just typical Ed in terms of that's how she kind of expresses herself, really.
Yeah.
But Ian and Ed get separated. Again, another classic horror trope.
Yeah.
And then Spike hears Ian crying out and kind of runs to him, and he finds Ian has been passed out on his side and has got a purple mark on it. Spike is still wearing.
Scene, by the way, such a good scene.
And he picks up Ian and then he turns around, and then with the heat vision goggles, he can see the creature kind of slithering sort of across the hallway, and then it starts to shoot off towards him. So he manages to grab Ian and then run and just about escapes by kind of climbing down the ladder. Just before the species or the blob gets to him. But Jed, you were saying it's a great scene. I mean, it was the way that it was sort of framed, right? That made it
because it was like, it's really claustrophobic, which is another great thing to do in horror, like make it as claustrophobic as possible. And he comes across the dog, and obviously that's hits you in the heart straight away. And then you've got this, something's coming towards you. You can see it on your radar that's coming towards you, but you want to save that dog because there might be a chance to like save it. So you grab it, and he's got Ian in his arms, and he's running, and the thing's coming for him. It's so dramatic. Will he get down the ladder in time? And I loved it. It was like, really built up the tension, and it reminded me very, very much of obviously Aliens and similar things in Aliens where they see the aliens. They can't see the aliens at first because the aliens are in the shadows, but then we know that's coming closer and closer and closer, and there isn't a lot of time to act. In that moment, you could see that Spike's a hero basically by going and saving Ian and essentially being the hero and kind of getting away.
Yeah, so as Jed said, this is a really great scene, and it's classic. Again, it's kind of classic horror in terms of the way that the scene is played out, and it just works really, really well. I mean, the animators who put this together did an incredible job. And one of the things I actually like that I was meant to mention and I forgot, and I'm sure you noticed this as well, Jed, is the kind of use of camera angles, because it's the whole episode is framed, as I said, like a horror movie. There's loads of shots of kind of characters being shot from the back, behind a piece of furniture and things like that. So almost like you're peeking on the characters, like something is stalking them. There's loads of kind of moments of silence where it's just sound effects. There's no background music, whereas Bebop is just as famous for his music as it is for its plot and its animation.
Very true.
But the music to an absolute bare minimum. They really didn't use too much music at all in this episode,
Oh,
and love that. Love the way they've done that, you know.
Yeah, and then they just let the emotion and the action like speak for itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good shout. I didn't even really notice that.
Yeah, they really just kind of allowed the scenes to play out the way that they wanted them to play out, and not, as I said, try to add too much background music, which normally they do, because normally the music plays a big part in Cowboy Bebop, and a big part in the individual episodes. But with this one, yeah, as I said, they kept that music down to the minimum, which was added to the atmosphere, really. It added to the whole creep. Yeah. So we get to a point now where Iron is down, Ed is missing, and Jet and Faye are down. So it's basically down to Spike now to try and sort this thing out. So he decides the only way to do this is to go to war. So again, this reminded me of a bit of Aliens with Sigourney Weaver.
Very much so. Yeah.
The flamethrower to the pulse rifle, and it's like, yeah, I'm done now. That totally was that scene when Spike is too. And then weirdly, he kind of picks up, like, I think it's a fencing sword that he picked. He was using his barbecue for his kebabs and that. So like, that's so random. Like, he's got like this flamethrower, he's got his gun, he's got this kind of his net gun, and then he's got like this sword in his hand for some odd reason. So he decides to go on the search for it. This thing is, and as said, it's all kind of classic alien stuff from there. He's kind of searching the corridors, he's calling out for Ed as well, who at this point is still missing. And then there's a certain point where he actually encounters the being for the first time. And it's done, I think initially, again, it's done through the heat vision goggles, so that we see it from his point of view. And then oh well, no, there's a really good fake out before that, isn't there? Because there's he's walking down the corridor, and then you see this dark liquid dropping, and somebody's on his shoulder, and he's like, and you're thinking, oh shit, here it is. And then you look up, realizes it's just a bit of oil coming.
Or
something.
That's great.
Yeah, really is cool. And then he goes to light his cigarette, and that's when the creature drops behind him and starts attacking him. And again, that just reminded me of so many like kind of creature stalker horror films that I've seen over the years. I really enjoyed that. So that was awesome. So that begins kind of the battle between him and the creature now. So he tries using the net, but it manages to dodge the weaponized net. He then decides that he's going to switch to the flamethrower, and he manages to kind of scorch the creature via the flamethrower. Then as he scorches it, he realizes that the smell smells familiar. And then that Jet talked to him about the fridge and something, coming from the fridge. And that's when you get the reveal of the episode. And it's so funny because it's like, it's weird. They've spent all this episode playing up the tension and the horror and the seriousness of it. And then along comes this really stupid ending where it's like, oh yeah, I had a lobster in there and I left it in the fridge to get moldy for a year. And
this happens in Red Dwarf. In Red Dwarf, Lister leaves a curry, and over like 3 million years he's been like in stasis. It grows into a monster basically.
Right.
So I'd be very surprised if this isn't influenced by that episode of Red Dwarf. But no, I loved it, and I loved it when he goes to that fridge and he opens it and the look on his face.
Oh man, that like was creepy as hell. Me and Rich were talking about that this morning. So yeah, basically Spike remembers that he'd taken this Ganymede rock lobster a year ago, and he hid it in the old fridge because he didn't want anybody else to eat it, but he forgot about it. So he goes up to the fridge in the attic, and then you get this brilliant kind of shot where he kind of slowly opens it, and you don't really like fully see the inside at first. You just kind of use attention to it, and his face is like is like the animators again have done such a good job with this, because you can literally see the horror and the disgust on his face.
Yeah.
And then the shot is you get to see the inside of the fridge, and my God, I felt sick.
The thing is, you don't see all of it.
No, you don't.
Yeah, but you kind of imagine in your head what you've seen. But like, if you watch it again, you probably only see a few seconds of like a hint of like some tentacles. Sorry, and just like
there might well have been testicles in there for the state of it all. Like, crikey.
It's just like slime. But you never really get to see it in full. All you're seeing is the reaction of Spike's face, and that's enough. That's enough for terror.
Yeah. And it's kind of fungusy. I mean, as Jed said, you kind of get a glimpse of like a kind of fungus, and there's very mucusy and wet, and it just is horrible, like really horrible. And because you don't see all of it, I guess your mind kind of fills in the blanks, because we all can kind of picture, gone off food or something like that, and it's not pleasant. We've all been there. We've all been there, and when we put in, Chinese and then forgot about it for a week, and it's like, oh, that's not good no more. But this is so it's our own kind of subconscious fills in the gaps in that scene, and that's what makes the scene so great. It shows you that kind of sometimes, less is more, and you can kind of get away with. You can still get the right effect from the audience, without necessarily having to show them everything. You can show a bit and let them fill in do the rest for you, which generally you will, because that's human nature, and that's just how our minds work.
There's nothing more scary than like the unknown, and also the inside of your own brain. Like, that's why in like Steven Spielberg, when he made Jaws, you don't see that. You don't see that the whole of the shark until the end. You'll just see there, and your mind is making up the rest of it. It's with the very first Alien, with Alien, the original. You don't see that the alien until the end. You're just seeing little snippets here and there. But in your mind, you've already like decided like what this creature looks like. And I love that. I love imagination just runs away with itself.
Yeah, exactly. So that scene was really well done. So basically realizing that this is where this creature must have come from, and gathering that he needs to get rid of it, Spike kind of switches off the gravity inside the Bebop.
Love this.
And he starts to push the fridge towards the airlock. And yeah, this was really great. A really, really great scene as well. Again, it kind of evoked a lot of the original Alien for me, and kind of how Ripley deals with the alien in those final scenes when she's getting ready to blow it out the airlock. It kind of felt a lot like that to me. But the way that, again, that they managed to animate this scene is just so impressive. You really
amazing.
Weightlessness of everything in it, it's really, really well done.
And you're 100% right. You can really feel the weightlessness, because you see, it doesn't only show you like the main action going on. It shows you what's going on in the other parts of the ship, like the sick people like rising off their beds because the gravity is being turned off. And the bit that like I thought was the best animated bit was when the fridge hits the wall and bounces off the wall and comes back. And I thought, wow, like they didn't have to do that, but like they did. It's just so well animated, and you can really feel the physics of this particular scene, and that Spike might get sucked out when he opens up the airlock.
Yeah, it does. They've done a terrific job, and the attention to detail in that scene as well is what's so impressive. Really, really good. But Spike is trying to get rid of the fridge, and then the creature actually kind of reanimates and comes back to life again. So you see him again. There's another really well kind of tensioned scene and well paced scene where Spike is trying to kind of get the airlock open, and you can see the creature kind of coming for him as well. And he manages to kind of just about get the airlock open. But the creature attacks him and gets him on the arm, so he loses kind of grip, and then he's trying to avoid getting sucked out, and he just about manages to hold on the inside of the ship as the fridge gets blown out. and then as it gets blown out, the fridge door kind of opens, and you see kind of like this kind of sparkles and stars coming out, and there's a Tchaikovsky song that plays as well, the Waltz of the Flowers.
Yeah,
that plays as this thing is kind of spinning through space,
it
letting
was beautiful.
these sparkles, and it was just surreal because it was just,
Yeah.
again, like for what had come before, it just was completely unexpected to then have a scene like that in there. So again, it just makes me think they let the writers and animators go wild on this episode, and we're just like, what? Because
those sparkles, like, I know it was pretty to look at, but I thought it might be the thing in the fridge monster, being like pollinating and spreading its seed everywhere in space. So like, there's more of these creatures will emerge in other places.
Maybe because they're certainly not explicit about what it's doing. It just is, a pretty shot. Ultimately, there's no explanation given for why it's there. But that's a good theory, to be honest. Who knows? It might be that's exactly what was happening. That it was kind of spreading its spores around, and the spores look pretty, and that's why it was happening. So yeah, that's a good one. Good shout. So we're coming towards the end of the episode now, and this is just such a surreal ending for this.
Ed.
We finally catch up with Ed, and you realise that actually she's just fallen asleep somewhere in the ship, and there was nothing wrong with her. She never disappeared. She never got attacked by the beast at all. She just found somewhere to sleep and was sleeping. So she's kind of floating through the air in anti-gravity, and then you see like the kind of blob creature is coming towards her, presumably to try and bite her. And as it gets close, in her sleep, she kind of reaches out, grabs it, and then eats it. She's like, I can't eat any more pudding, and then goes back to sleep. And you're just like, huh?
Yeah. And then like it kind of shows you brief like shots of like the other crew members just like sleeping.
Yeah, they're all kind of just knocked out and passed out from their bites and stuff, and Ed's just eaten the monster and gone back to sleep. Yeah, and that's where the episode ends. It ends there. So like you're just kind of like, wow, okay.
But you know what? Like maybe you can answer this question. Like, so the reason why this is very standalone, this feels more standalone than the rest, is it doesn't end with See You Space Cowboy.
Now, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
How often does that happen?
Not often at all throughout the series. The series will always end with See You Space Cowboy. I think. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to look this up for another discussion. But I think this is the only episode in the series where they don't end with See You Space Cowboy. And even when you get to the end of the episode, they usually have the kind of short trailer they play at the end to tell you what's coming up next, and there's usually a voiceover. In the voiceover on this one, it's Ed, and Ed is like, it's such a shame that all the characters died. Oh well, next week come back and then it will be Cowboy and Ed. Yay!
I missed that bit.
And then you hear like and Spike kind of jump in and like, what are you talking about? We're not dead. Like, stop trying to drag people. There's going to be a proper episode next week.
Ed is like she loves the drama.
Yeah. Ed was giving the crew that smoke. She was like, we don't need them no more. Like, you got me now. But it just all of that kind of just adds to, as you said, the standalone feel of the episode, really. So yeah, it is a really, really interesting, man. So that was a fun episode. I mean, I know you said this is one of your favorites. I think for me, it's definitely one of my favorites as well. And probably one of the best ones in the series as well, because of how well they use their influences in the episode to really kind of create some tension and some drama. Which can be a difficult thing to do, especially in anime. Horror animes, they can be fun and spectacular to watch, but there's very few of them that I've ever seen that I felt were genuinely kind of frightening and quite tense. But this one does it quite well because of how it uses its homages. But sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna agree with you. And I think I genuinely this is my favorite episode now. I really like the pilot episode, of course, because when you first see the whole kind of like what's happened to Earth and you see space, how beautiful it is, that's always impressive. But this, as a standalone horror episode, is brilliant, and I love the fact that it kind of wears its influences on its sleeve. Like you can tell straight away, okay, this is aliens. Okay, this is they love Alien, and they're just doing like an Alien pastiche. But it's more than just an Alien pastiche. It's spinning it into the world of like Cowboy Bebop, and obviously there's loads of other like sci-fi references, and like every episode, Cowboy Bebop, it's partly Star Wars, it's partly Western, it's partly film noir. But this specifically is an encapsulated horror episode using all like the normal horror tropes that work, but just set in this universe. And do you know what? I every time I watch an episode of Cowboy Bebop, I warm to Faye more and more and more. She's like becomes more and more funny to me. But sometimes she could just be seen as quite annoying. Like sometimes she's quite annoying, but like she's very playful in this episode. I think I quite like that. But yeah, I think this could actually be a film in itself. If they ever make a Cowboy Bebop film, like something like this, with them like being chased by a monster, like in space, that could kind of be cool.
Yeah, totally. Totally. I would definitely watch that as a standalone movie. And Faye, I mean, yeah, Faye, I always say like, that like maybe Ed and Ian are my favorite characters, but to be honest, I mean, Faye, I love Faye, I love Jet, I love Spike, and what I love about Faye is that she's so unapologetically complex. Like there's nothing that she's ever going to do that's simple, and she doesn't care that it's not simple. It makes sense, and that's all that matters. And that's what I love about Faye. Like, she couldn't give a shit about what anybody else thinks. Like, doing it, and you don't like it, tough. Like, I'm doing this because it's best for me. She's always looking out for number one. And that's what I love about her. Like, it's that I don't give a crap attitude. But then, as said, it's interesting because as said, listeners will, when we get into the series a bit more, you'll learn a bit more about Faye, and you'll realize there's quite a lot of vulnerabilities underneath all of that, and there's a lot of things going on with her that explain kind of why she's sort of sometime-ish and and mood swingy and all of that. There's a lot that explains all of that behind her, but she was quite playful in this episode, and she does. She's a character who's written to be not comic relief, but I guess she's the one who almost kind of gets the best lines, the best singers in terms of like in the show. Definitely has the funniest kind of one-liners in the show and things like that. So
I've got her lesson here. I've got her lesson. Her lesson of the show was survival of the fittest is the laws of nature. We deceive or we are deceived. Thus we flourish or perish. Nothing good ever happened to me when I trusted others. That is the lesson. That is a cold hard bitch right there.
That is Faye in a nutshell. Yeah, that is Faye in a nutshell. As I said, screw you. I'm doing me. Like whatever happens to you, tough. Like you deal with it.
I also love that we've got the yin yang. We've got like Ed, who is like almost the opposite of Faye. He's like,
oh yeah. She's completely different to Faye. Completely.
Do you remember her lesson?
No, I don't.
Her lesson is lesson. If you see a stranger, follow him. That is her lesson. There are kids watching this. There are kids watching this show. Like, do not listen to Ed. Do not listen to Ed.
That is typical Ed. Typical. Like just absolute nonsense. It's just like, what are you talking about? That doesn't even make sense. What are you talking about?
Especially in this show.
It's amazing. I love it.
And
amazing.
Obviously, we get Spike's lesson at the end, which is, and what was the real lesson? Don't leave things in the fridge.
Oh, yeah. That's right. I remember that now. Yeah, very matter of fact.
Don't leave things in the fridge. Credits.
Yeah, I like that. All right, man. Well, let's head over to, as we do at this point in the show, to Bebopopedia, which is the fandom site for Cowboy Bebop, the TV show. If you do want to find out any more about kind of background behind episodes and stuff, it's a great resource and a great tool. So I do highly recommend it. So we'll have a look here to see what we've got. So there's a couple of references I think we already kind of discussed, Jed, anyway. But homages and references for the episode are the plot structure and the atmosphere of this session with an unseen alien monster attacking the crew is a homage to the 1979 movie Alien. So, yeah, we kind of touched on that. And as I said, it kind of ties into a lot of other horror movies as well. Because I guess Alien kind of set that standard, didn't it, for kind of the unseen monster? I mean, I know obviously there were movies that did that, but Alien was the one that really kind of set the bar for what was achievable with that, really, I think. So, yeah.
That's the one everyone copies, basically, after that.
The session also bears a resemblance to the Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode, The Alternative. Now, I don't remember that episode, and I'm usually a big fan of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, but I can't remember that.
Really? I could never get into Deep Space Nine. It just seemed they were going nowhere. It's like the others, they're venturing out. These guys, and then Deep Space Nine, they're just standing still.
It's on a space station, yeah. I know. But what I liked about it was kind of like it focused a lot more on the political intrigue and kind of the kind of socio-economic structure of life in space and with different races and things like that, in a way that some of the other series touched on but didn't quite do, because they were more about exploring different areas and exploring different cultures and things like that. But yeah, Space Nine was cool, man. I did enjoy that. Another piece here, it says Jet's opening monologue begins with the word space travel log 0968, which is a reference to the beginning of all the Star Trek series that always have the captain for that particular series giving the star date in which the episode takes place. Also, some of the classic Star Trek bridge sounds can be heard when Spike is on the Bebop's bridge. And yeah, that's right. You can actually hear the kind of, that beep, beep, beep sort of the bridge makes. They actually use that noise in this episode. The jettisoning of the container, the use of waltz of the flowers, and the autopilot flying the ship while all of the passengers are incapacitated are all a homage to 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Do you know what else it reminded me of? Like you'll remember this. Do you remember Ulysses 31?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, man.
Yeah, one of the best theme songs. And
yeah.
Because that ship was on, I believe it was an autopilot, and everyone was floating in the air, and Ulysses had to come and save the day, and I can't remember what he had to do, but he was being punished by the gods, so the rest of his ship was like floating in the air, and he had to save them. And I think this episode for some reason reminded me of that cartoon. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a good shout, actually. Check out Ulysses 31 if you're listening, folks. Check that out because it's a really, really good animated series, actually.
I've got it on DVD. It's so good.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Here's an interesting one. So the Sessions fridge monster might be a reference to the blob creature in John Carpenter's first film, Dark Star.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point, actually. It kind of does. More to do with Alien, I think, but there is some of that going on there. And I think John Carpenter obviously is like one of the masters of horror, so he kind of established almost space horror.
Yeah.
That's a good point, actually. I need to rewatch Dark Star again.
Yeah, I don't really remember Dark Star, to be honest.
It's one of his best, but it's decent.
Yeah. I'll check it out at some point. You heard Jed mention at the top, and he was right. The Sessions English title is a reference to the Aerosmith album of the same name. And also, I forgot to mention in this episode, they mentioned Route 66 as well. when they're planning a route to Mars. Route 66, Route 66 is one of the first interstate roads to stretch the majority of the continental United States. So if you didn't know that, then you know. I'm sure most of you knew that already. And then the last bit of homage is apparently Spike gearing up to fight the creature is similar to a scene from Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando.
Nice.
Well, it could well be a reference to that. But I mean, as I said, I think it was more, to me, it felt more like an Aliens reference, really, than But yeah, there you go. Okay, so there's a little bit of trivia with this one as well.
Okay.
So the first point is the entire Bebop crew is completely fine the next episode with no symptoms. And while it's never explained how they all got better, midway through, Spike is seen setting the ship to full autopilot mode en route to Mars. So it can be presumed that Ed summoned help after landing. Ed states in the preview of the next episode that everyone died, and she is now the star of the show called Cowgirl Edward.
Amazing. And I'd also watch that show.
Yeah. I mean, like there is one of my favorite episodes that is coming. It's a bit later in the series. It's one that focuses entirely on Ed and Ein. And oh my god, this episode is so good. I can't wait till we get it. One of my favorites. It's called Mushroom Samba.
Okay, I need to watch that.
Yeah, watch it. Watch it. You're gonna love it, mate. It's amazing. I said I can't wait till we cover it on here because it's the episode that made me just absolutely fall in love with Ed and Ein and that team and that partnership because they work so well together. But it's hilarious. And the last bit of trivia is that I don't know if you know the anime called Space Dandy, which is also
so Netflix.
Yeah, it's also directed by the same guy who directed Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo. In Space Dandy, apparently in episode 8, the same fridge monster makes an appearance.
No way.
In the beginning. Yeah.
That must be set after this then. Ah, that's interesting. So now we know where the fridge ends up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Some deep cuts right there. But that's the episode, man. So listeners have said, would urge you to go and watch Toys in the Attic because it's absolutely awesome. It really is. It's one of the best episodes in the series, as Jed said, for so many different reasons that we've laid out for you. So definitely make sure you go and check that one out. It is a lot of fun. Jed, thanks for coming by. Before we go, we'll have a quick chat with you anyway. We usually do a bit of Bebop news, but there hasn't been much in the news this week, really, from Bebop. So I thought I'd quickly get your thoughts on the live-action adaptation that Netflix is producing, which is due for release next year.
Yeah.
No, we haven't had confirmations yet on release dates. I don't know if you've heard anything on your end yet.
Just that they're going to start shooting. Is it the end of this year? Is that right?
Right.
I believe, and then it's going to be sometime in next year. I guess it's going to be out. Could even be 2020. I reckon it's going to be 2021. To be honest, with all the effects they have to do.
That's what I was thinking as well, because it's such a huge undertaking in terms of how much visual effects they have to include and things like that.
And also, they're not allowed to get this wrong because if they can't get, they can get other stuff wrong. They can get anything else you'd like wrong. They can't get Cowboy Bebop wrong. They have to get this right first time. I think the thing is with the casting, it's pretty good. It's pretty good, but much as I like the actress they got for Faye Valentine, it would have been cool if they got an Asian actress. It would have been cool. And obviously, we've had this discussion before about who my preference would be, and they didn't go with that preference, even though that person auditioned. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. I trust Netflix. And I trust the property of Cowboy Bebop that they're going to get this right. And as long as they don't change it too much, as long as they keep to the storyline and they pick out some of the best episodes, maybe we'll see a live action version of Toys in the Attic. I would absolutely love that. And I think John Cho is. At first, I was like, no, he's too old. Does he know martial arts? Is he cool enough? And do you know what? He definitely is. I think he's perfect now. Looking at it, and after the announcement, it's been like maybe a couple of months since the announcement. He got announced. It's perfect. He's cool as you like, and the good thing is he's an Asian actor that the Western audience don't mind, because like he's Western enough to like cross over. He's not too Asian, if you know what I mean, which might put off some people. But yeah, I can't wait. But I just don't know how they're going to pull off some of these things, because like I said in the pilot episode, if they do the same pilot episode, they're going to have to create a whole universe. They're going to have to create a whole. They're going to have to show the backstory of what happened to Earth, like, and just the kind of melting pot of like different cultures all together and stuff. And wow, I just don't know how much the TV show is going to cost. I have faith though. It's Netflix. They'll do it right. What do you think? Do you have faith in it?
Yes. I mean, I'm excited. As a Bebop fan, I'm really excited. This is something that myself and Rich have talked about for years, and even way back when Keanu Reeves was attached to the adaptation and they were saying they were going to do a movie, we were really excited. So yeah, I am looking forward to it. My excitement got slightly tempered by the fact that Netflix doesn't have a great record with live action adaptations of anime, to the point where it's become an internet meme how bad they've been at it. But at the same time, I'm enough of a fan of Bebop to give them the benefit of the doubt. And in general, Netflix does quite well with their series. So, they're not trying to do a movie out of it. They're actually trying to do a series, which I think in hindsight is the right thing to do, because, as you said, Bebop is just so dense and so huge that, just doing a movie wouldn't really do it justice at all, because of the amount of depth there is. So doing a series is the right choice, absolutely, for them. I was happy with pretty much most of the casting. Same as you, I kind of wish there was somebody else who they'd gone for Faye Valentine. But that, I think the actress who's been cast, Daniela Pineda, I think her name is. I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt. Let's see, what kind of material they give the character of Faye and how that plays out. And I don't know if you heard this, but we talked about this last week on the Bebop News, but there was a fake story going around that Netflix were going to change Ain's breed.
I heard you talk about this, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be mental. There'd be riots.
Naturally, people absolutely lost their shit, and rightly so, including me. But then the scriptwriter actually came out and said, "No, that's bullshit. As far as he knows, Ian is the Welsh Corgi, and that's that. And he's been working on the project for 3 years. So, he said that there's none of this husky business going on. So I was like, all right, cool. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I can kind of see, because huskies are like, I don't know, people like huskies better than they like Welsh Corgis, I guess. But no, they have to. That'd be one casting change that would really piss me off.
Oh yeah, totally, man. Totally. I mean, it would change Iron completely, because the thing about Iron that makes Iron so cool is the fact that Iron is a Welsh Corgi, and yet he's intelligent, he's strong, he's brave, and yet he's this tiny little dog, who on the face of it shouldn't be able to do anything. But as I said, he's a data dog, so he's hyper intelligent. He's all of those things. When you make that dog a husky, it kind of changes the whole dynamic, if you know what I mean. It would be like, say, this little frail old lady, and but inside she's a badass martial artist and super intelligent, and then go, let's an old lady, let's make her a young woman, and it just changes the dynamic. You know, you lose what kind of makes that character work.
Yeah. What do you think about so even though, I mean, I guess technically these characters are all meant to be Asian, what do you think about them casting black actors in like half the main parts, basically? So you've got Mustafa Shakir as Jet Black. To be honest, I think he's a good. He looks the part, I think. And obviously, Ed's being played by someone called, what's her name? Oh, just like a young girl of color. What do you think? What do you think about that? And do you think it's like, I haven't really seen any backlash about it, really, but I haven't really.
No, I think the reason why there hasn't been is because the creator, well, he wasn't necessarily the creator, but certainly the director, Shinichiro Watanabe, was very kind of. I remember an interview with him. I think it was in 2012 or something like that, when on the anniversary, and someone asked him, you know, why are the characters so ethnically diverse in Cowboy Bebop at a time when that wasn't necessarily commonplace in Japanese anime, and he explained that he wanted the characters to feel like they could be anybody. So, you know, when you look at, say, Ed, for example, Ed's full name is part Chinese, part English, part Dutch, part French. So there's a mix of things there. Faye Valentine is actually a Romani, even though she's drawn as Asian. She actually comes from the Roman background.
Okay.
You know, Jet is everybody knew Jet was a black man, even though he was drawn as Asian.
True.
So he kind of, you know, Watanabe was very insistent that he wanted these characters to feel like they could be anyone. So even though they had, you know, certain designs to the way they looked visually, the characters were portrayed and their names and their backgrounds and things like that, he wanted it to be as diverse as possible. And that's one of the things that Bebop does beautifully well, is that it creates each of the worlds that you kind of visit within the series that you go to. They're incredibly multicultural. You know, there was an earlier episode that me and Rich looked at. I can't remember the episode off the top of my head, but they go to I think it's one of Saturn's moons that they go to, and eventually this moon is designed to look like Chinatown, and yet even though it looks like Chinatown, there's a load of people who are clearly of Mexican origin living there. And then there's, you know, there's different things like that. There's one of the key characters from episode 2, Hakeem Abdul, who, you know, when you look at him, looks like a 7-foot-tall black man, but actually the technology to manipulate his appearance, and is actually a Caucasian man, but he's able to change his appearance constantly via this technology, so that he's able to hide out whilst he's doing his crimes and so on. So they've always kind of strived to make the characters as ethnically flexible as possible.
So in Ed's got like a weird name as well. Like it's like Eddie Wong something.
Yeah, there's a Chinese influence. There's French, as said. There's Dutch. And in Ed's case, it's because Ed's background is so completely mixed up. So yeah, you know, they always were clear on trying to keep the characters flexible, I guess is the way you would put it. So in I'm quite, you know, open-minded about their casting choices and what they've done with the actors that they've chosen. Although as said, I do feel in Faye's case, it kind of feels like maybe they could have gone with an Asian actress there.
But I mean, she looks Asian in the animation, so like.
Yeah. I mean, she's designed, she's drawn as Asian. That's the thing. Even though she, as said, she has this Romani history, this Romani background, but yeah, I mean, it looks like quite impressive. So you know, we'll see how we go from there and what they dish up when the series comes out.
Yeah, and it's just going to make more people go back and watch the original animation as well, which can only be a good thing.
Mm.
Uh,
Mm.
it's already very influential as it is.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
think like influence will like it'll stretch his arms out even further, and that is only a good thing. If more people are influenced by Cowboy Bebop, then the world's going to be a better place, in my mind.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Well, that's almost a perfect note to leave it on there, Jed. But yeah, before we go, man, yeah, could you tell us a little bit about what you've been kind of working on? And I mean, I know there's a lot of projects and stuff that you can't talk about right now, but if you give the audience an idea of what you're doing.
Sure, yeah. So I'm doing the two kind of like big shorts that I did, Dawn of the Death and Salt. They're both being turned into big Hollywood movies. So in the process of sorting all that out, and various different things are happening in Hollywood right now, and it's very, very cool. Also got a film set up with a very, very, very big director out in Hollywood, one of my personal heroes. Can't talk too much about that, but it's literally like my dreams come true. So
Nice.
have another film set up with a big studio in Europe as well, which is going to be very, very exciting and weird. And then potentially some TV stuff coming, like happening. Also, a film that I directed called Multiplex. That's basically finished now. I've been editing it for a million years, but it's basically done now. It's looking really good. I'm also working right now. The last couple of weeks, I've been working with some songwriters because I'm writing a musical. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, but it's not quite like a normal musical. It's basically like a horror sci-fi musical, like a real messed up one, but with like awesome songs. So I'm working with a lady who writes for some of the big like K-pop bands out in
Oh,
Korea.
okay.
Yeah, she lives in the UK, and like she's written songs for some of like one of my favorite K-pop bands out there. And just luckily, she wanted to work with me. I just like reached out to her, and she wanted to work with me. So I was like, cool. So doing that. I also there's a lot of stuff going on. Also, I wrote a script in a week the other week. I was just like, can I write a script in a week? Um, with a friend of mine, and it's we're kind of like shopping that around and trying to get that made as well. So yeah,
Okay.
doing a lot, man.
Awesome.
Doing a lot. Keep busy.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You got your plate full, man. Definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool, man. Well, Jed, thanks a lot, as I said, for coming along again and stepping into the breach. It's always a pleasure to have you along, and it's just awesome to shoot the breeze with you, man. So,
Yeah,
thanks
man.
very
Yeah,
much.
yeah, definitely. No, as I said, like it's always an honor coming on your shows, both your shows, and yeah, long may it continue. So
Oh
I think.
yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Listeners will definitely be having Jed back sooner rather than later. So
Cool.
yeah, if you're a fan of his, watch this space. And yeah, where can people find some of your stuff and check you out and see what you're doing?
You can check me out. Find me on Twitter. I'll probably say what I'm up to there. That's just at Jed Shepherd, JedSheperd. If you want to see me in real life, I'm doing a Q&A at Fright Fest for Alice Lowe's new film. I wasn't involved with the film, but I'm just doing the Q&A. That's on the 23rd of August. Um, in London Leicester Square in the View, in the Cineworld Cinema. If you want to see me in person, and besides that, just just keep listening to this podcast. I'll probably be back on it at some point.
Yep, awesome, dude. No doubt, no doubt. Oh, and Salt is still available for people to view on Vimeo, right?
Yeah, go to Vimeo, type in Salt, directed by Rob Savage. So maybe type in Rob Savage's name if you can't find Salt. And yeah, or go to my Twitter, and I think I've saved it. Or go to Rob Savage's Twitter, and you'll see it saved as his pinned tweet. But yeah, you'll see a 2-minute version of the feature that we're about to make. I'm very excited about
Cool.
that, and because it's massive, it's going to be big. So
Hmm.
yeah. So and let me
Awesome.
know what you think on Twitter when you watch it.
Yes, yes, do that, people. Make sure you spread the word as well and share it around if you enjoy it. Let other people see it, and let people know that it's a good thing. These things kind of only take off when you allow them to take off by, spreading the word. So yeah,
So,
make sure you let other people know about it as well. All right, well, we're going to bring this episode to a close. Thanks a lot for joining us for session 11. We will be back next week with session 12, which will be part 1 of a 2-parter. And we're really looking forward to this one because this one is very, very action-packed. So we'll leave it here for now, and we'll say good night. Thanks a lot for listening. We'll see you again soon. Peace out. Thanks for listening to us. If you're down with Wulong Talks, show some love by following us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Wulong Talks. You can also find us online at www.wulongtalks.com or drop us an email at wulongtalkspodcast@gmail.com. We can also be found as part of the Britpod Scene Collective, and we're also officially E14 endorsed. Search for those hashtags to enjoy more content from us and from other great British podcasters.